Do you wanna know what it takes to produce a podcast for Spotify? Let me show you. Beginning of 2021, we've released Pseudoside. 9 different stories produced and hosted by Poppy, Damon and Alice Fiennes. 9 different stories about people who faked their own deaths. After release of that podcast, Poppy and Alice start thinking what to do in the next season. At that time, they start getting messages from the listeners to look into the disappearance of Patrick McDermott. Patrick McDermott was a cameraman and light technician. He started dating Olivia Newton John, celebrity singer and actress. They've been on and off relationship 9 years, and then he vanished. There's a whole Wikipedia page on it. The Coast Guard said that more than likely he had an accident and he drowned, but there's been speculative whereabouts, and a lot of, especially Australian tabloids, started doing the press and stuff that, he's been spotted in Mexico, he faked his own death. And this has been going on for like 17 years. That's why Poppy and Alice got interested in the story and decided to cover it for the second season of Pseudoside. There were several recording stages for this project. The overall narration was recorded at London studios. That's where Poppy and Alice recorded their scripts. And then they went to LA, visited the boat, spoke to people who knew Patrick McDermott, and even retraced his last steps. They went to Mexico. They spoke to people who supposedly saw Patrick living there. They spoke to people over the internet as well as over the phone. They also got actors to reenact some of these transcripts. There was a lot of recording on location and over the internet, over the phone, even the actors, but because I was working off of the stems, there wasn't that many tracks that I had in my session. If we ignore all of these, so let's hide them, then we had both the Poppy and Alice narration at the top, and then the archive material, the actors, it was just 2 tracks. The ones at the bottom, the 4 at the bottom were my imports from the original tracks that I had to use in a session. But when the stems were delivered to me, it was really these 3 tracks that I had to work with. Usually we, and I mean myself, as well as Anthony, our editor, do the first edits and take care of the raw dialogue. However, this time around, Poppy and Alice hired John Scott, who edited dialogues in Pro Tools sessions and prepped them for me. Therefore, the best course of action was that he will export these dialogues as stems and I will work from the stems. This had its advantages and disadvantages. So that's the original session from John. I quickly realized I wouldn't be able to use it because, as you can see on the left hand side here, he's using the plugins that I don't have. So we've decided that he'll just export the stems for me and I'll work from the stems. Let's switch to that session then. So yeah, I've worked off of these stems, and the editing I've done, well, the first edit was the structural edit, the pacing edit. So, having all these in one group, as you can see, I was editing the pacing of the dialogues, the narration and the clips. I've also worked to minimize the breaths. So let's say we had breaths here and there, they're much louder, but I would just edit them down. And then I filled the gaps with the ambience smudge that I created, so a room tone I've created for the podcast. And as far as the signal path goes, it wasn't that much because everything was already processed, so I didn't want to put anything on top. I had a neutron there, just a little bit of EQ, that's it, no compression, it's already been compressed. I did use de-esser with RX. I had Gulfos on some of the clips, but using it as a de-esser as well, rather than, as you can see, so it's only targeting higher frequencies with taming 60%. And then, so some denoiser, everything went through a stereo bus. And on a stereo bus, I had a Gulfos as well. And
my name is Tim.
It was, and it was just targeting this with a slightly, bias to make it less bright and sort out the lower frequencies. It's a Gulfos master, so it's more sensitive. Then I also had Ozone, but on Ozone it was just a maximizer to hit that -16 LUFS threshold, because I did add the music to the stems. Even though the stems were already correct loudness, I had to put the music on, so it was a little bit of work to do. Composing music, you can say, is the dark art of the project. How do we know what fits and what doesn't? We can have some tricks and patterns that we can try, but in the end, well, we don't know. We can hope for the best. For Pseudoside Season 2, the approach to music went through few radical changes, and in the end we settled on a mixed approach. Like I said, we used a mixed approach when it came to scoring, so these were new cues that I wrote for the series. We've used a few of them. Then we had cues from Season 1, and then we also had all these cues that we used in Season 1 and other mixdowns, as well as some royalty-free tracks. So that's actually the mixes for the music, and these are the score tracks. So it was quite a process to get it working. I was worried it will sound, there'll be a mix mash of all of that, but in the end I think it worked. So we had the shoutouts to our Season 1 with the themes, with the main theme as well, of course. We had some royalty-free tracks, but they fit the style that we were going for. But we also had some new, more orchestral tracks that I've composed for this season. How does it all sound? What's the general vibe of the whole show? Now, these are the questions we've got to answer during the mixing sessions. Because I was mixing from stems, I had less flexibility, but it also meant that I could settle on one vision straight away. Like I said before, with mixing, it was more about the pacing, it was more about controlling the breaths as well as the sibilants. That was the big one, because everything else was processed. That limited me in a way, because I didn't want to process things on top. Obviously, then everything would sound over-compressed. But yeah, I showed you before, in reality, I only had the maximizer to hit -16. I had reverb set up, but I didn't really use it unless it was for some effects. I did try to use Gullfoss as a de-esser on some of these clips, especially recorded over the phone. There was some EQing and compression going on some of the clips, especially recorded by the actors. The biggest issue for me was that sometimes I had to source the original audio from the sessions that were sent to me and then fit them with the stems, right? So as you can see, all these stems are stereo. Now I had to source, which is import the unprocessed audio from the original session, process it so it fits what's already here, and also make it fit the stereo stems. In some instances, like in here, I just used a mono track and then made it fit with some sound effects. In other instances, here I use mono as well. So as you can see, we got a stereo track that goes into mono. It's fine, it's a stereo track, but it's the same signal, so it is essentially mono. But a trick that you can use if you wanna create that, essentially you can duplicate the track. So we'll just duplicate that one, select both of it, and then if you move it onto stereo track, it now becomes a stereo track, a 2-track. So that's a trick that I've used for that show. So that was the biggest problem I had, sourcing the originals, making it fit with already processed stems. A clear feedback loop is crucial when we work on projects that involve multiple people. Each draft is sent out. Then I gather QC notes, that stands for quality control, in a document where they put in their comments as well as time codes. I look at these notes, I fix them, implement them in the next draft. Did you find this video helpful? Well, hit subscribe and you can become a better audio producer, just like me. So I've prepped a QC document where we could put our notes with a time code, with a note, and then I put fix or not fix and a comment and also a name. As you can see, we had quite a few drafts, 4 in total, with 5 being the final. And it's a really good way to have that feedback loop, keep everything in one document on track, see what changes been applied, if we want to revert, if we want to make some further changes to the project. I also had some production notes here as well. We don't judge a podcast by its cover, but it'd be stupid to say that it doesn't matter. For season 2, Paulina, our designer, and my awesome wife created the logo and a page for Pseudoside in a similar style to season 1. So yeah, the artwork is a little bit cheeky. It shows, I think it conveys the vibe of the show, and it's definitely in the style of the first season as well. So that's season 1 there. That was the artwork, and then season 2 has a boat on the logo, and on the page we've just added the season 2. Initially we aimed at the beginning of 2023, but the release date was brought forward to beginning of November 2022. Now, because of that tight deadline, we've decided to release 2 episodes in the first week and then the following 4 episodes weekly. That gave us a little bit of a relief to what already was a pretty hectic schedule. We've changed the artwork on Casefile's site. We've posted some trailers, as you can see there, which is great, video trailers, some other artwork here as well. And of course, then it was released on Spotify with the first few episodes on the same feed as the season 1, but with the new artwork and of course the new name. Each project, each podcast, each episode teaches us something. So what did we learn from Pseudoside 2? Well, 1, there was a little bit of confusion when it came to the music direction of the show. Initially, we had a conversation and I started writing, but some things got lost in translation and we had to adjust on the way. Ideally, we would have more conversations before the composing commenced, but because of the tight deadlines and schedule, we just couldn't find the time. So the lesson is that next time I need to organize this a little bit better and figure out the better way to have these discussions. But no worries, I can still reuse the tracks in other projects. And 2, it's worth remembering that when we work with people who care about the project and want it to succeed, everything will be fine in the end. Yes, we can have conversations, there may be a slightly different approach, but we're banded together with the same goal in mind, to create an awesome story in a podcast form for the listeners to enjoy. Remembering that will help us through the workload, the late evenings, the days when we feel like nothing works anymore. So let's have faith in ourselves. Pseudoside Season 2 is out now, only on Spotify. So what are you waiting for? Go and listen to it. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this video, check out the next one and we'll see you soon.